As the Coachella Valley continues to grow as an entertainment and cultural empire in the California desert cities, Mutual 111 is your go-to for local and regional arts, literature, music, special events, and theater. From the Mutual Broadcasting System studios in Palm Springs, it's The Desert Scene with Bonnie G.
And welcome to The Desert Scene. So happy to have you with us today. And I'm very happy to welcome to the show Kirby Fields, playwright Kirby Fields, who has a play coming up at CV Rep. Hi, Kirby. How are you?
Good morning, Bonnie. I'm great. How are you?
Good. So I'm really intrigued by the title of this, Summer Session with the Bones Brigade. Tell us a little bit about this.
Sure. Well, let me start with the second half first, if that's okay. The
Sure.
Bones Brigade, if you grew up skateboarding in the 1980s, as I did, was a legendary group of a handful of professional skateboarders who skated for Pal Peralta back then. And even though they were a few years older than those of us who wanted to emulate them, they were absolutely like gods to us. So the idea is that there's a group of tight-knit friends who kind of identified themselves with the Bones Brigade. However, the other piece of it there is that I always thought the image of the Bones Brigade, their kind of logo was a skeleton, had a little something to do kind of with like death hovering over the group, which plays in with the play as well. So the idea of summer session, just meaning that it takes place in the summer, and it's kind of a skateboarding group, but with this looming sense of impending loss over top of it.
Wow. So did they use that logo for that reason, or was that just sort of your interpretation of it?
They used a logo of a skeleton on a regular basis, but I kind of interpreted it now. And, at the time, as a 14, 15-year-old boy, I just thought it was cool.
Yeah.
But, looking back on it now, the kind of grim echoes of it kind of resonated with what I was working with in the play.
So is this a play that had been percolating in your brain for years and years, since back when you were 14, 15?
I think the origins of the play have been sitting with me for some time, just in terms of absorbing the people from back then and the way that they have continued to be significant in my life. A couple, I don't know how many years ago now, it was probably 7 or 8 years ago now, a member of our kind of crew from back then passed away kind of tragically. And in the wake of that loss, all of those kind of feelings and emotions from back then came flooding back to me. And I actually wrote it very quickly in the wake of that. But I think that the kind of source material, as it were, has been in me for the better part of my lifetime.
And so is the play very dark? Is it sort of a dark comedy, or how would you describe it?
I would not call it dark. In fact, in the rehearsal room, we keep hearing, people keep saying, "Oh, I didn't realize," or "I had forgotten how funny it is." I don't know if I think real is probably the best way to describe it, in a sense of the range of emotions will inspire in you, some kind of darker thoughts, but also humor, kind of maybe wistfulness, anger. I think it runs the gamut of human experience.
Yeah. And so were you a skateboarder in those days also?
I absolutely was a skateboarder in those days. I won't cop to being especially good at it, but it was a big part of my life, and I was pretty committed to it for a long stretch, for sure, yes.
So tell us about your how you started writing plays. Was that something that you always aspired to? Were you also an actor-director, or tell us about that journey?
I know what I can, and I know what I can't do, and I definitely cannot act.
Okay.
And I definitely know that people have a better directorial eye than I do. So I very much came to the theater arts from a writing point of view. I was actually on a pretty standard kind of academic literary track for a very long time and was in a PhD program in English at the University of Kansas, actually, where I fell in with an alternative theater group there called English Alternative Theater. And I just wanted to be close to theater. My dad taught directing, so I was always around it, but kind of on the edges. So I volunteered as a stage manager, and I knew that this company was committed to producing new plays. So one Christmas break, rather than watch the Godfather trilogy, I decided to try my hand at writing. I'd always been interested in writing, but just didn't have the life experiences for it.
Right.
And that play ultimately was produced. From there, I decided to take a shot at a few MFA programs and reasoned that if I got into an MFA program that was, better than the University of Kansas PhD program, I would pursue that. And I ended up getting into Carnegie Mellon's MFA program.
Excellent.
Where I spent 2 years and kind of haven't looked back since then, but that was my kind of roundabout way to playwriting, but it was always from a writing point of view rather than any of the other aspects of it.
So how many plays have you had produced at this point?
I've had, so including one-act plays, which I think will count, I've had, I'd say 10 to 12 between a handful of full lengths and then a number of one acts as well.
And are you where'd you grow up? Were you from the East Coast, Midwest, and are you out here in Palm Springs now?
I moved around a lot. I was born in West Virginia. I spent significant time, like one of the characters, actually in San Diego, before moving to Joplin, Missouri, which is where my entire family remains to this day.
Okay.
From there, I kind of toured the Midwest in terms of like college towns in the Midwest and Arkansas and Kansas before making my way out to New York via Pittsburgh at Carnegie Mellon. I've been in New York, I think, for 15 years now, which is the longest I've ever lived anywhere. I love being out here in Palm Springs, and I know it's different than like true Southern California, but it feels very at home in terms of the years I spent in San Diego in middle school.
And tell us how you got connected with CV Rep. I mean, CV Rep puts on wonderful productions, and I know what's your opening date again for summer session?
December 7th is the opening date.
And tell us how because I know they do wonderful stuff there, and Adam Karsten is terrific. How did that relationship develop?
I know Adam from the neighborhood in New York. Our kids, our two younger sons, were friends, and we would spend long days kind of supervising them at Bennett Park across the street. And Adam and I just kind of struck up a natural conversation. Adam actually went to Carnegie Mellon as well to study directing a number of years before I did, so we didn't cross paths there. But he and I just really connected because of our mutual interests. I would read scripts of his, he would read scripts of mine. He actually directed a short film that I wrote that was in 10 or so film festivals across the country before the pandemic. So we fell in very kind of easily there and just kind of connected in that way. And then when he came out to Coachella Valley, he talked about a new play program that they were getting off the ground. And I submitted a couple of plays, actually, but this was the one that I think the reading committee responded most strongly to.
Right.
So that's how I ended up out here. And just to second what you're saying, while I've had a number of productions that I'm extraordinarily proud of, the scope of what CV Rep is providing is beyond anything that I've ever experienced, and I just could not be more appreciative and grateful for this opportunity.
It's a lovely space. It's a wonderful space to have something produced.
Oh, it's amazing.
What would you say, if you were advising young playwrights, what would you say is the key to writing a memorable play, a really excellent play?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I would say two very general things, and then one I think is more specific. One is, see as much as you can and see all kinds of cedar that you can. The stuff that they put on here, but also if they're kind of smaller companies around the area, I would suggest, going to see those as much as you will and just soaking it all up. I would say if you want to write, then you should write like as much as you possibly can.
Yeah.
Every day is a little ambitious as possible, but it's a little more. I know it's cliche, but the whole perspiration rather than inspiration is very true. And then, at Carnegie Mellon, I studied with Milan Stitt there, who wrote a play called The Runner Stumbles. And a piece of advice, maybe I should say, that he shared, said, as much research as you need is in an encyclopedia entry, and you will find the rest in your heart. So
wow.
I would recommend to aspiring writers that they kind of look inward for their material and trust that the personal can ultimately be universal.
I love that. And I'm assuming you also ascribe to the advice I've heard from many times for any kind of writer is write what you know.
Yes, absolutely, write what you know. And I would say also there's a certain amount of trust in what you know, that it is potentially of interest for other people if you do it in the right way.
Yeah. Well, Kirby Fields, congratulations. The play is opening. Summer Session with the Bones Brigade is opening December 7th at CV Rep. Go see it. If you haven't been to CV Rep, you got to check it out. But this sounds fascinating. Thank you so much for being here and continued success.
It was my pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for taking the time.
All right, Kirby Fields, thank you. And we'll see the rest of you the next time on The Desert Scene.
Join us again for The Desert Scene with Bonnie G. from Mutual 111. Be sure to visit thedesertscene.com for more show information and mutual111.com for our full library of episodes.